Hi everyone, I hope you're okay. This is, I've got to be honest, this is a really last minute video. As you know, I'm looking at doing my videos for Aintree. The Aintree Festival starts in just 4 days now, pretty excited about that. But someone's just, or two people have actually sent messages saying, who do you fancy in the Irish National on Monday? And I sort of have a look through it, and then I thought, once I've gone through the form, why not make a quick video on it, or as if I'm going to share it with them, I might as well share it with everyone. So that's what I've done. Obviously, any national race, long distance Dane chase are always very difficult, and at Delightly Soft going tomorrow, we're really going to be in the, it's really going to be a tough race to win, but it still doesn't mean we can't have a punt, does it? And we'll see where we go. The horse I'm going to start with first is obviously the informed combination of Willie Mullins and Ruby Walsh, and that is Perfect Gentleman. Really consistent horse, this. Obviously, as I said, Mullins and Walsh together, going very well. At the festival, he was in the 4 mile race and he was travelling well, but two things, I've had a look back on the video on this. One, he was probably outpaced coming down the hill on the good ground, and he lost a bit of ground, and he made it up. It was at the foot of the hill, so he was a bit outpaced, which suggests to me that the softer ground will be in his favour. But then I think ultimately between the second to last and the last, he just faded away, and I don't think he fully stayed 4 miles with the hill at Cheltenham. Now back to 3.5 on softer ground, which might blunt the pace a bit. I think that's going to be more up his street tomorrow. And I think Perfect Gentleman is well positioned to run a really good race. A horse I like, well, he should run a decent race. Technically, is The Job Is Right. His festival form ties in with Perfect Gentleman behind Cause of Causes. Obviously, Cause of Causes is now being touted as a serious Grand National horse, so you know, realistically these horses should be up for this. The one thing that has put me off The Job Is Right, I've gone back through his whole career, just had a look at his course form. Every run he's had at Fairyhouse has been absolutely diabolical, and based on that, you know, he's actually waited to run a really good race, but he would have to suddenly, after a good few poor runs at Fairyhouse, he'd have to suddenly find something at the course, or suddenly agree that it doesn't suit him. I've had a look if he was out of form at the time. Quite often when he was running at Fairyhouse, he was in half decent form, he'd go there and run no sort of race, so that's put me off The Job Is Right a bit. Lots of Memories is interesting, purely because of who he's been racing against and what he's doing now. Earlier, he's only run 3 or 4 times this season. One time he was beaten behind Wounded Warrior, who obviously ran really well in the RSA chase, and the other time, or one of the other times, he was behind Don Polly, which won the RSA, and to be honest, will take a hell of a lot of stopping in the Gold Cup next year, I think. This, even though it's a national, is a lot easier race than what he's actually been running against. The big question mark here is if he stays, because if he does, he's on a really nice mark. The problem is, behind Wounded Warrior and Don Polly, if you actually look at it, credit to the horse, he tried to like throw it down to him in the last half mile, before, rightfully so, he was completely outclassed and got blown away. So it was before his stamina came into play. One thing I like about him though, he is a hold-up horse, so if he doesn't get involved in a battle on this too early and he just hunts into it, lots of Memories around 20 to 1, could be a really good each-way bet, I think. An interesting one, but I still can't weigh him up, is a horse called No Secret. He was with David Pipe and did absolutely nothing for the yard. He was awful. But like can sometimes happen, he was transferred to Tony Martin, made his debut 3 mile on soft and won. Change of tactics, change of yard, everything could have been for the reason there. What's kind of put me off this horse at the moment, even though it's potentially well in, and the fact that he's only 16-1 says this, before this he was not in good form. Was it a one-off? You don't know. You're taking a huge leap of faith that it wasn't. Another one is as well, it was the change to front-running tactics was the reason cited for the stewards for the apparent marked upturn in form. There's about 7 or 8 front runners in this one tomorrow, so suddenly is it a one-off? Is he going to go an uncontested lead? There's a lot of question marks, which is slightly negating the feeling for No Secrets. Looking down again, another one who, God, this is going to be a really interesting race this tomorrow the more I think about it. Champagne James was the huge festival gamble. He came down nearly from 16s into about 5 to 1 at the festival, and unfortunately the gamble went astray. But I can't, they stuck him up from 2 miles to 3 mile plus. I can't tell, and I've watched the race a few times, if it was the going that beat him or if it was the trick that beat him. It was in the amateur race, and obviously Katie Walsh was on board. There was a quote at the time saying, Katie Walsh afterwards saying, he didn't let himself down on the ground, which is suggesting it's the ground. but it's a really, really tough one, this, to know which way it was. If, let's take it out, say it was not the trip and it was the ground that beat him, he's unbelievably well in here, and he should win if it was just the ground that beat him. However, if it was the trip, then he's got no chance here, so it's a really, really interesting one. The bit that's making me think this has got a chance is, out of that one last night, it was very easy to go back in trip. It was the obvious thing to say, oh, we didn't say go back in trip, but again, they've tried the stay in trip option, and they've tried it on soft ground, which suggests everybody in that yard thinks he's going to stay. And Champagne James, you never know, the festival gamble might have been one too early, maybe this is meant to be the time, maybe he'll come in for it again tomorrow, you just don't know. The favourite, and I've got to be honest, I'm not 100% sure why, is Cantlow. I'm not saying he can't win, but what we've had since the champ announced, Tony McCoy announced his retirement, is what I've been calling Tony McCoy pricing. He was on the ludicrously short price favourite in the Midlands National that fell. Why that horse was 5-2 was because Tony McCoy was on it, and there's been several in the last few weeks. Yeah, he has been winning, no doubt about it, but horses are winning with Tony McCoy on it at a lot shorter prices than they should be. Bookies are running scared because a lot of people are getting onto the Tony McCoy factor, because the reality is, next Saturday, if he wins the Grand National, will be his last day in the saddle. This is his last Irish National, possibly, if he, yeah, it will be. If he runs in this and then wins at Aintree, this could be his last time riding in Ireland. So the sentiment and the money is with Cantlow. The issue that I have, though, just getting through the sentiment, looking at the facts, zero evidence of him so far of staying this trip, that he's never seemed to stay it. He's got no form on the going, so it is a massive shot in the dark. The other thing that worries me on this is, last season, he was slammed in this by 14, 16 lengths in the end. So you could argue, yeah, 14 lengths, but he didn't seem to stay, and it was on better going, so suddenly you're going to have to hope, and he's in worse form this year than last year, that he's suddenly going to go on the going, he's a year better, and he's going to make back 14 lengths. To be honest, it's one of them. He's 8-1, 9-1 mark. I would want 33-1 on Cantlow. As I said, I'm not saying he's not going to run half decent race, because, you know, a lot of these times you can get horses that run, but I can't take 8-1 on Cantlow, I'm afraid to say. Other horses to mention from an outside point of view, Lion de Bernay's interested, but the problem is this horse is 13, and for a 13-year-old to go and win what looks like a pretty competitive Irish National will be a really big performance. The one thing that keeping him in the focus, though, is he does have an amazing record around this course. Every time he's run here, if he hasn't won, he's run a cracking race. So it depends. Sometimes people like a punt on a 33-1 and say, oh, well, give me a run for his money. Lion de Bernay will give you a run for his money if he gets round. So if we'll kind of see him like getting right up there at the end, I'm struggling purely on his age, to be honest with you. I think there's some younger legs and better handicapped horses. She's got grit as well, has been in half decent form, but this is a big step up in class for that horse, and the trip is a huge question mark. If he stays the trip, he might have a chance, but there's nothing suggesting, well, it's a shot in the dark again, but he's another one, about 33-1, he could give you a half decent run for your money. Now, coming on to the horse that I actually like, and I've gone over this one time and time today to see who I fancy to win, and the horse I've come down on is Los Amigos for the Draper Yard. He doesn't stand much racing. If you actually look at it over the last 3 or 4 seasons, he's only run once, I think, this year. It was twice the year before that. But the one thing that he has got going for him, he is 2 for 2 at the course. The going is ideal, and if you look at some of his beaten form, he didn't run much last season, but look at some of his beaten form. He got placed behind On His Own, who went on to just get pipped in the Gold Cup. Okay, it wasn't a vintage Gold Cup, but if you put Gold Cup form to national form, it gives him a good chance. He also got placed behind Gallant Oscar, who won a cracking race at the festival and is now being majorly touted. I think he looks like he's going for the Scottish National. You look at his mark, and I think he's really well in. He should stay. Everything's indicated, the way he travels and the way he goes on. He just seems to grind it out towards the end. There's not really a turn of foot. Everything points towards this horse. He's a best price 14-1, and if I was going to go and put my money on anything tomorrow, it would be Los Amigos. I want to give 1, 2, 3, 4 here, because, you know, it's a huge field, and the form coming on is Los Amigos from Perfect Gentleman. I'm also going to shove Champagne James in there, and I've also now, you've got to look at Lots of Memories, purely because at 25-1 it is now. If he's got anything about him, then, you know, the form behind Wounded Warrior and Dom Poley could give him a really good chance. So yeah, we're looking at Los Amigos at 12 to 1, Perfect Gentleman 10 to 1, Champagne James around 14 to 1, and Lots of Memories in the high double figure prices. Well, as I said, this was a last minute video. I hope it's of some use. It might at least focus on what you're looking at, etc. Wednesday night I'm going to look at putting up the Thursday of entry. I'm going to leave it till the Wednesday, I think, or the Wednesday afternoon, because there's a lot of horses. Some are entered in the Fox Hunter, some are entered in like the Topham over the national fences. You're also going to find out who's not going to get in the national and not, and a few others, and a couple of the handicaps on multiple entered. So I'm going to leave it as late as possible, but tune back in for them. As always on this Irish National, let us know what you fancy, who you think, and yeah, happy Easter. Take care. Bye bye.